A mess. I mean, in the end, it appears like Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders are well positioned to win, followed by Elizabeth Warren, followed by Joe Biden, fourth place. Let's start things off with RT's Sarah Montes de Oca.
Several conflicting reports going on with what exactly happened last night in Iowa. Now, some are saying it was the app Shadow, while others are reporting that it was the coding of the application.
So it stands to reason that Hillary Clinton's name would somehow come up in the Iowa caucus, and it has. Even though she wasn't even on the ballot, apparently it was one of her longtime staffers, a couple of them, who created the app that turned the Iowa caucus into a bit of an embarrassment. And as usual, with anything that has Ms. Clinton's name on it, Bernie Sanders ends up getting hurt in all of this. That's right. Instead of proclaiming victory before millions of people watching on TV last night, Bernie Sanders, along with Pete Buttigieg, learned just a few hours ago that they are winning the Iowa caucus, with more than about half the precincts reporting. More than half, actually, to be fair. Now, talk about a buzzkill, right? Talk about a buzzkill, especially for Bernie Sanders if he ends up winning this thing. I mean, this is a guy, by the way, who is disliked by the establishment of both political parties and who corporate journalists openly deride. Here are the candidates sounding off about this confusion.
So listen, it is too close to call, so I'm just going to tell you what I do know. Our union is stronger than Donald Trump.
And today marks the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
So we don't know precisely how many delegates we have or how many we'll get, but I feel really good about getting more than our fair share.
So we don't know all the results. With hope in our hearts and fire in our bellies, we're going on to New Hampshire, on to the nomination, and on to chart a new course for this country that we love.
So there's the candidates trying to make sense of this thing, which is pretty nonsensical, really. So what happened, right? So the Iowa caucus is a count of about 1,700 precincts across the state. But see, instead of casting individual ballots, voters came together to choose the order in which they rank the candidates. That's what they do. And then the information is sent to the state capitol where it's tallied up, and then they announce the winner. That's the way it's always worked. But this year, there was an app created to try and automatically update the numbers. Unfortunately, some precinct officials couldn't even figure out how to download this thing, right? Because in some cases, they literally could not remember their Apple IDs. So they couldn't download because they had to put in their Apple ID. And when they finally did download it, the app didn't work. At that point, it was decided that precinct officials would call in their results by phone, but that caused the lines to get jammed. Can you imagine like 1,700 people all calling one place to share information involving hundreds and hundreds of numbers? Oh, and they had to do it, what, one by one? You get the picture, right? But wait, there's more. It turns out that not only were Hillary Clinton's election team members responsible for the design of the app, but that one of the presidential candidates in the election invested money in this company. Pete Buttigieg and his campaign contributed money to the tech firm who designed the app, the same Pete Buttigieg who is now leading in the state that used the app that he invested in. The race to choose a Democratic candidate is on, and it ain't pretty.
The app's creator, for the first time, they are apologizing for the issues, saying, "We sincerely regret the delay in the reporting of the results of last night's Iowa caucuses and the uncertainty it has caused to the candidates, their campaigns, and Democratic caucus goers." Several blaming Shadow, saying it was used during the Iowa presidential caucus. And speaking on anonymity, people familiar with the matter said the app was created in only 2 months and it was not properly tested at a statewide scale. But the firm now has apologized. But the latest statement from the Iowa Democratic Caucus said while the app was recording data accurately, it was reporting out only partial data. "We have determined that this was due to a coding issue in the reporting system." This confirmed what Iowa Democratic Party spokesperson Mandy McClure said earlier, that the delay wasn't caused by the app, but instead a reporting problem, saying, "We found inconsistencies in the reporting of 3 sets of results, adding this is simply a reporting issue. The app did not go down, and this is not a hack or an intrusion. The underlying data and paper trail is sound and will simply take time to further report the results. Well, here's what we do know. The Federal Election Commission filings show that Democratic candidate Pete Buttigieg gave tens of thousands of dollars to Shadow. This was last July for software and subscription rights. Spokesman for the Buttigieg campaign, reported by the Washington Examiner, said that it paid the app developer for text messaging services to help us contact voters. The developer Shadow is an affiliate of Acronym. This is a Democratic nonprofit created in 2017, running, quote, targeted media programs to educate, inspire, register, and mobilize voters. Acronym said that it is not responsible for providing any technology to the Iowa Democratic Party, presidential campaigns, or the DNC. Now, according to LinkedIn profiles, at least the CEO and CEO of Shadow worked for the 2016 Hillary Clinton campaign. The candidates are asking the DNC for more transparency, which the DNC has promised. But the latest out of Iowa obviously doesn't help the Democrats in their push for clarity. Many are still blaming the caucus leaders for even using an app, especially some new technology. The Nevada caucus, scheduled for later this month, just announced it will not be using the Shadow application, a smart move to avoid further complications. Reporting for the News with Rick Sanchez, Sarah Montes de Oca, RT.
What a mess, huh? Joining us now is former Congressman Alan Grayson. Good enough to pick this up for us. Let's start with just what happened in Iowa. Let's start with just what happened in Iowa. It really is a bit of a mess, isn't it?
It's a mess, but nobody's going to remember the election computer problems tomorrow. What they're going to remember is the fact that someone who was the vice president of the United States and a senator for 44 years came in fourth. That's going to be hard to forget.
So you think Biden's a big loser in all of this?
Yeah. I mean, everybody else met or exceeded expectations, more or less, and the vote was split 5 ways. But to come in fourth when you've got that kind of a clot, it's hard to believe.
Let me take a little bit of issue with you. I think that a lot of people are going to look at the Democratic Party, especially those who are very young and feel like the Democratic Party really kind of screwed up the whole Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders thing, that they kind of weighted things too much toward Hillary Clinton, didn't give people enough voice. And they're going to look at this thing now and say, what the hell is going on with the Democratic Party?
Well, I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. There's any number of people who feel that way, particularly Sanders supporters, and they're entitled to how they feel. But there's nothing, quote, wrong with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party just held a very effective series of debates that gave people on the outside a chance to speak, people on the inside a chance to speak, and gave the voters a lot of information to make an intelligent choice. So that was a good process up to this point.
Let me push back a little bit more, given the circumstances that we're now getting regarding what's going on here in Iowa. I mean, we've got the Hillary Clinton campaign staffers, several of them, apparently designed this app, which was used, which most are saying is the culprit, what really screwed things up and created chaos in Iowa. And then you have Pete Buttigieg, who apparently had in some way funded or invested or paid into the app. You got the one guy who won. You got Bernie Sanders' biggest opponent, both linked to this app. That, Alan, does not smell good.
Look, there's any number of grifters around both parties. A friend of Melania got $27 million of inauguration funds because she's a friend of Melania's and apparently for no other reason. That's a lot more than the $60,000 that you're talking about in Buttigieg's case, if that's the right amount even. Whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. The point is that there are people who try to grab that money, whether they're media advisors or computer, quote, experts or app developers or anyone else. And it's unfortunate when they get the money and then create a disaster like this.
But he paid into an app, and now it's appearing like he's either number one or number two when he was originally, according to the polls, somewhere around 3, 4, or 5.
Well, really 4. I mean, the polls consistently showed him behind the other 3 candidates who came in second, third, and fourth.
So if he wins this thing, how do you go from 4 to 1, and then it comes out that you were linked to the app that they used? I know you're saying there's nothing that, and I'm not saying, by the way, that we have the goods on Pete Buttigieg. I'm saying it doesn't smell good.
If there is an explanation that's kosher, if there's an explanation that actually doesn't involve trickery or chicanery, the explanation is that he met an awful lot of Iowa voters. He's been living there now for more than a year, almost nonstop. he probably met about 20% of the total voting population in Iowa in the course of that year. That's 100 people a day. You can meet 100 people in a day. So I think that kind of extreme retail politicking may explain this, but of course you can't do it again. Yeah. You can't do that in a week in New Hampshire. You can't do that in 2 weeks all over the country for Super Tuesday. So that's going to just collapse. If that's a strategy, that's not going to win past
this
Iowa.
Thing that you and I just mentioned, because we're courageous enough to do so, most people in the corporate media are probably not even going to talk about it.
That's true.
But if it gets out there and
Yes.
people start talking about this, would you advise him to address it?
Yes, of course, he has to address it. And I think it's fair to say it's going to come out. You cannot keep secrets in America in the year 2020. It's going to come out. You can't do that anymore.
Let me talk about the Democratic Party, something that you've been beholden to for many years in your life and still are, right? The rub against the Democratic Party right now is it hates Bernie Sanders, doesn't want him in the race. And young people, millennials in America, are really angry at the party because they believe, right? They perceive that the Democratic Party is trying to push out their guy.
I don't think there's many people who are in elective office at high levels in the Democratic Party who, quote, hate Bernie Sanders. There's no reason to hate him. That's not how it works. There are major corporate donors, supporters of the Democratic Party who are right-wing, people like Bloomberg was just a few years ago, who don't want Bernie because they think Bernie's going to cost them a lot of money. And they're very bottom line about this. These are the people who back the Blue Dogs, the people who back the so-called New Democrats. That's a very large donor constituency in the Democratic Party. And you will see some kind of backlash if Bernie ends up winning contests 2, 3, and 4, which now looks possible. You will see some kind of backlash like that. In politics, as Newton says, it's his third law. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. We will see what the reaction is.
Did you just say, and we're down to 15 seconds, that the donor class in America has undue influence on the Democratic Party?
Yes.
Thank you for being so honest. Alan Grayson, you're the best. Appreciate having you on as a guest.
Thank you very much.